Hello and welcome to A Bettor Morning, presented by Rival Fantasy. I'm Heather Klein. Rival Fantasy is the all-in-one fantasy sports platform. Let's welcome today's panel. Award-winning host, the fantasy exec, Corey Parson. Senior Manager of Content for Fantasy Alarm and host of the Quick Out Fantasy Football Show and Fantasy Alarm DFS shows, Jon Impemba. Host of Her Story in the Making, Britt's Fantasy Blitz, and co-host of Lightning Round, Britt Flynn. And Fantasy Alarm lead NFL analyst and host of Fantasy Fiasco, Andrew Coop Cooper. Welcome, everyone.
Hey, good morning. Good morning.
Great
morning, everybody.
It's a better morning.
It's a better morning.
It's a better morning indeed. Nice, Coop.
That's right.
All right, let's get to it. The Cleveland Browns and the Philadelphia Eagles start week 2 in the NFL preseason tonight. What are you looking forward to seeing with these two teams? Corey, you're up first.
Oh, wonderful. Hey, how's everybody doing? Well, I'm looking to see with the Cleveland Browns, I want to see if they look like that offensive line has gelled more and meshed more and progressed since last season, because obviously they have a big job ahead of them this upcoming year with Deshaun Watson and trying to get him back rolling. Interesting to see what they do at running back situation and passes out of the backfield, and obviously DTR running around and acting crazy is going to be pretty lit as well. On the Philadelphia side of the football, we kind of pretty much know what the Eagles are, so nothing really too much to see out of the Eagles. Like, I'm not a real big watch preseason to see somebody guy, you know what I'm saying? Like, I already know what most of these dudes can do. I already got them pegged at a certain spot by this point, so it'd just be cool to have some football on.
I know it's crazy for me to disagree with Corey, but I think that there is something to see with this Philadelphia Eagles team. We need to see how the Eagles backfield shakes out. I've got an article coming out on Fantasy Alarm about this, but we really have no idea who the starter is going to be. The reports coming out of training camp are conflicting. They're saying Swift is handling the passing work, but how much work is that actually going to be? And in the first preseason game, Penny played 16 snaps, but only carried the ball 4 times. Gainwell didn't even play, but he's being touted as the RB1 in some circles. I need to see it. I'm also looking forward to seeing Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I loved him at UCLA, and I feel like he fell too far in the draft simply due to his size. But this guy is electric. He's so fun to watch, and he's really going to turn some heads tonight.
Yeah, listen, I'm excited just for having football on the television, kind of like Corey said, like me able to watch the game. But when it comes to the preseason, this could be just sort of a dress rehearsal. They don't play the 4 games anymore, so you sometimes got to figure out when they're going to play some of the starters, see, how they look outside of, those team scrimmages that they've been going on. You see a lot of reports coming out on how these guys are looking when they're going in those live scrimmages during practice. But you get them in a game setting, you'll be able to kind of focus in and see exactly how they're able to perform. We know the Eagles defense is pretty highly touted this year. See if they can continue to kind of make some plays here. But all in all, for me, it's just exciting to have some more football to watch on television.
Yeah, I tell you, for people like us that are really deep into dynasty leagues, all these other leagues, you can learn just as much from who plays in these games from who doesn't. And what we've heard so far is that Nick Sirianni and Kevin Stefanski aren't going to play their starters in this one. So they did in the first one. In this one, they're supposedly not going to play them. They both kind of agreed to go with the backup. So I'm interested to see if guys like Elijah Moore, Donovan Peoples-Jones are going to play. Obviously, Amari Cooper won't, but that's going to be pretty telling of what that depth chart looks like. Same thing goes for Jordan Akins and Harrison Bryant. We know David Njoku's not going to be out there, so who's going to be out there first? Or maybe somebody has already proven they're good enough. Maybe a guy like Jerome Ford gets the day off too, along with Nick Chubb. So I'm interested in seeing who's already locked down a spot. As Britt talked about, it's going to be huge with the Eagles' backfield. So let's see who's out there. Let's see who's already earned their way and gets to coast for this part of the preseason.
Go ahead, Britt.
No, I was going to say I'm super excited to see Cedric Tillman. We saw some flashes of him in that first preseason game, and he looked pretty good, even with Kellen Mond. I want to see how DTR and Cedric Tillman pair back up together, because I believe that they were teammates in high school as well. So interesting to see if that connection is still there.
I want to see if Anthony Schwartz is ever going to do anything at all. I mean, last week he came out and pulled the John Ross, which is get one carry and fumble it. So let's see if he can do anything at all.
You know, the Eagles just draft Jalen Hurts. He's gonna do the running for the Eagles. That's the only runner on Philadelphia that's really going to be an asset that will help you win a championship. I think those other dudes, you'll have them for certain bye weeks and stuff like that, but I think we've seen what Philadelphia is like A.J. Brown, Smith, and Jalen Hurts.
I think Corey's right. Like they don't dump it down. And Sirianni doesn't call screens. Jalen Hurts takes it to himself. They have that crazy QB sneak play that should be illegal. Like, why would they pay Miles Sanders? It's completely unnecessary. I think they had a good job piecing it together. And, you know, to Britt's point, there are deep enough leagues where those guys will matter, but I wouldn't get too excited about any individual one of them. Sorry, Chris Sellers, with your Kenneth Gainwell shares.
I was taking a lot of Kenneth Gainwell just because of the fragility we've seen out of Swift and Penny over recent years in best ball.
And Hurts.
So,
and Hurts.
Yeah. So, I think they're not shy of using multiple running backs as we've seen in the past, with Sanders, Gainwell, and Scott all being in the mix at times. So I didn't really expect that much to change, which is why I wasn't willing to pay the price on Swift when he was going so much earlier than the other running backs in that group.
It's time to let Swift go.
Yeah, he's fallen off. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
We're here to get you ready for your fantasy football draft. Start a free 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription and get the Fantasy Football Draft Guide and Cheat Sheet free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/draft. Those are great for fantasy football, but not great for their team's success, like possibly a Jonathan Taylor, who left camp again with another excuse. A personal matter. Name a guy that you feel fits the mold. Britt, you're up first.
So I'm going to kind of take some low-hanging fruit here and take Justin Fields. He finished last year as the QB6 in fantasy, but the Bears still only finished 3-14. He only threw for 2,200 yards, and although part of that was due to a lack of receiving options he had, he just wasn't very good in a real-life sense. I would even kind of say Tom Brady somewhat fit this last year. He was QB 12, but the Bucs finished at 8-9, which was a very uncharacteristic stat line for the GOAT. Some of this can be misleading, though, because real football isn't fantasy football in the sense that the defense can either save or cook your bacon. But these are two guys who stood out for me last year.
Yeah, you kind of stole my thunder a little bit when it comes to quarterbacks. I went with Kirk Cousins here, a guy that I'm high on for fantasy, but often doesn't translate to actual success for winning football games in the NFL. So I'm pretty high on him in that offense this year. When it comes to the Minnesota Vikings, I think they'll score a lot of points, but I don't necessarily know if they're going to win a ton of games there in that division. They saw that their defense is kind of a paper lion last year. So for me, Kirk Cousins, the fact that he can throw for yards and throw for touchdowns is great for fantasy, but maybe not enough to help that Vikings team get over the hump.
All right, I'm up. So the one I'm going to go with here might be a little controversial, but I'm going to say Austin Eckler. This is a guy that, he's great at catching the ball out of the backfield, but he's never had 1,000 yards. And last year, when push came to shove and this team was up against the Jaguars, all they needed to do was get a couple first downs to win the game. They couldn't do it. They need to bring in a complimentary back to go with Austin Eckler to get those short yardage, to get the goal line scores. And that's why they're hesitant to pay this guy, because I think they realize that if the back we have now can't do the full job by himself, why are we going to pay him all this money, right? So Austin Eckler is a guy that is amazing for fantasy football. He was the RB1, but I still think at this moment they need another guy who can do the ground and pound. This guy's never had 1,000-yard rushing season.
Something like this can change from season to season. This kind of is like, the way I look at it is kind of like if you got that clutch gene or not, you know what I'm saying? So a player that I've noticed last year wasn't great for fantasy, but had that clutch gene was Jahan Dotson. Now, I don't want people to think that I'm saying that don't draft him in fantasy this year because he's going to be a better commander than he is a fantasy asset. But people are drafting him as a fantasy asset. Last year, Son had 35 catches. 7 of them was touchdowns. Like, that's probably not going to happen again this year. Like, if he has 70 catches, he's not going to have 20 touchdowns. Well, if he does, that'd be a record, and he definitely would be a good fantasy asset. But I think Dotson, from what he showed last year, he was a better fit on the Commodores. I mean, the Commanders than he was for fantasy purposes. I can't believe the team name is the Commanders.
The Commodores, Commies,
the Commodes.
This coming from a guy who thinks that they're going to make the playoffs, Corey.
I do think they're going to make the playoffs. I'm
and
Sam
then you
Howell.
call them the commodes.
They are the Commodes. I still gonna make fun of them. They'll be in the playoffs, but they got Sam Howell. They gonna make. I'm doing something today on week 1 starters. It's 7 new week 1 starters this year.
Yeah,
including Sam Howell.
I think Britt and Jon have it right. The quarterback is the one spot where you really could just light up the stats, but kind of blow the game when it matters most. I mean, the gold standard for this question is probably Jameis Winston, right? Especially that one year where he threw 33 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, which, hey, touchdowns are worth 6 and interceptions are only -2.
Oh, listen, y'all don't realize nobody did it like Blake Bortles, though. Like, that dude was the king of garbage fantasy points that meant nothing, and his team hated him.
That guy took me to a fantasy championship one year.
Blake Bortles was winning people fantasy championships.
It was so gross.
Megastar.
Shout out to Blake Bortles, wherever he is.
Every season, there are coaching changes. It's inevitable. But how much weight do you place on coaching in terms of a team's success? What's more important, the coaching or the talent? Jon, you're up first.
Yeah, listen, firsthand last year, we saw the Patriots offense just be a clown show, basically, with Matt Patricia as the offensive coordinator there, because he had no business running that offense as a guy that was a former defensive coordinator. We saw Urban Meyer as a head coach in the NFL just completely tank a season of the Jacksonville Jaguars with his inability to coach at that level. On the flip side, we've seen like Mike McDaniel come over and lead Miami's offense and really change what they have going on. So I do think that there's value in good and bad coaching. We see the Steelers taking a lot of flack with Matt Canada as an offensive coordinator already being on the hot seat after only having the job for a year or two because they don't think his offense has evolved enough to get the most out of their offensive talent. We've seen this time and time again across sports where coaching matters in some sports and doesn't necessarily matter in the other. They say the NBA is not a coach's league. It's a player-driven league, and you have guys that can just kind of sit there and go on rides with the top talent. But I think in the NFL, coaching matters. I mean, a lot of people laughed at Dan Campbell, but it's seemingly he's the one getting the most out of that Lions team. So, how important is he considering how bad the Lions were before? So I do think certain coaches matter, but we don't really know how good or bad these coaches are until they're already in those positions.
Yeah, it's interesting because some of these good coaches can be stuck with bad players or even just middle of the pack players for a while and never be able to get it done. Andy Reid, a good example where he was good enough to get Alex Smith to the playoffs every single year until finally they realized maybe they should get an upgrade. And once they got Patrick Mahomes, it was wheels up, right? So the way I look at it is this. You have to have a good coach, but a good coach alone can't do it. Like Urban Meyer is going to bring everybody down, but the players are the ones that play the game. So if I had to pick one or the other, I would send these players out there without a coach rather than trying to have a coach up the worst players in the league, because we've seen with Bill Belichick, like you said, it's not that easy. If you could have the greatest coach of all time and he can't get it done just because he doesn't have Tom Brady anymore, then it's not going to work for anybody else. So it's the players that play the game. That's the most important part of this.
I'm going to go with the coaches. I think the coaches are the most important thing. And let's just start by giving examples. Let's start in the NBA, where Eric Spoelstra every year drags a team with undrafted free agents in the starting lineup to the NBA Finals. and beat legacy franchises like the Boston Celtics on their home court with players like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown who make $60 million a year. Let's go to last season. I believe it was Sunday Night Football. Tennessee Titans at Kansas City Chiefs. Malik Willis was 5 of 16 for 80 yards against Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs won that game in overtime. Mike Tomlin coached Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, and you never heard a peep out that locker room until they were gone. You talk about the New England Patriots. Look at the team that New England put out there last year. Look at the skill position talent that New England had, and that team was 2 bad plays from possibly going to the playoffs and the AFC of all conferences. Yeah, great talent is awesome, but when you get the right head coach in there with the right system, look at Daniel Jones. This guy has been a thrift store quarterback his whole life. He get with an adult head coach, and they give him a $40 million contract. Coaching is very important.
Yeah, coaching's super important. So I definitely wouldn't say that it outweighed the player talent, but let's look at the Broncos last season, right? Nathaniel Hackett couldn't manage a clock to save his life, and the team really suffered from it. Play calling, outsmarting the other coach. These are all huge elements of the game. But then you kind of look at the Brady-Belichick era. Once Brady left, Belichick has had a lot of trouble replicating the success that he had. Part of that, like you said, Corey, may be the overall personnel in general, but it's still something to think about. But then you look at Phil Jackson, who just had the Midas touch and made everything he touched turn to gold. So the bottom line, and this is kind of going to be kind of wishy-washy, but I think it depends on the situation and the actual players and the coaches.
Phil Jackson had Tex Winter, but that's a good example. Phil Jackson had the fastest race cars. And when he went up against Larry Brown, remember Kobe and Shaq were still in their prime. And Larry Brown, who's a basketball X and O's guy, with dudes like Rasheed Wallace, got that championship. I think it's a combination of both. You know what I'm saying? But I
think it's a combination of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant.
That helps.
If I take the 3 of you guys and run the triangle offense, we're not winning a damn thing. Okay? I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
But in New York, he was an executive in New York.
Sure.
And the thing with Phil Jackson too, it's not just the talent that he had on that team; it was how he managed that talent, because the egos that he had all in one room that still managed to work together and get something done. It could have been like today's NBA, where everybody's squabbling over money, everybody's squabbling over playing time. But Jackson somehow made it work with this philosophy that he had. And I mean, one of the best coaches of all time, hands down, regardless of talent, in my opinion.
Well, I'll give you that point. It is an impressive feat to get guys like Antonio Brown to stuff that crazy down and not let it ruin the team. But you still need to have Antonio Brown. So I just, at the very least, there can be an argument that it's 50-50, but there's no way you can give more than 50% to the coaches.
I really think you can, because look at that situation what Mike Vrabel did last year with Malik Willis going into Kansas City. That was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen in my life. Like Mahomes had to take off and run for them to win that game.
And Mahomes won the game, and he won the Super Bowl because he's Patrick Mahomes. And all Mike Vrabel's rings are because of Tom Brady and Adam Vinatieri.
Hey, Mike Vrabel had a team in the AFC Championship not too long ago, and with Ryan Tannehill as the quarterback. And damn, Mike McCarthy can't get Dak Prescott there. Well,
I thought Dak Prescott was bad, Corey.
That's definitely player related. My bad. Mr. Interceptions. He hasn't been throwing them in training camp this week, so that's good.
Now it's time for Dealer's Choice. Give us your bet of the day. It could be on any topic and any sport. Coop, what do you have?
So I already told you guys yesterday that I'm betting on the Browns, and I'm doing that explicitly because I think that DTR at quarterback is a lot of fun to watch. And at this stage of the game, you might as well root for fun. But there is one bet out there this weekend, NFL bet, that is free money. And that is betting on the Baltimore Ravens to just win. All these other teams, they don't take these games seriously. For some reason, John Harbaugh just decided that these games matter to him. This team is on a 24 game preseason winning streak. The Baltimore Ravens have not lost a preseason game since 2015. So I'm just going to keep taking that free money until they lose one. Maybe it'll be this week because I'm betting on them. But if they win this week, I'm just going to keep betting my money on those birds and taking home the free money. 24 straight games. John Harbaugh, he probably sits there at this point and says, we're winning all these games. We're not losing any games. So I'm in on that.
Another great head coach, John Harbaugh, almost had Ty Huntley take out the Bengals on their home turf last year.
What's your bet, Corey?
No, listen. I'll be honest with you. First of all, I got a couple bets, right? So I watched Hard Knocks last night. Let me tell you something. You need to have some money on Quentin Williams to be Defensive Player of the Year. He's a disruptive 3 technique. He's in the paint on every single play, playing with a whole bunch of action, just got his money. Quentin Williams could be dominant this season. And when you get a dominant 3 technique like that, you got to love it. The Carolina Panthers. Let me talk to Frank Wright right quick. Frank Wright, don't get that quarterback killed, okay? Please fix your blocking and your schemes and your protections. Do not get that young quarterback killed. I'm asking you that. I backed you up for Coach of the Year. I backed Bryce up for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Frank Wright, don't mess this up because I will be outside that stadium leading the charge to get you out of there. Thank you. I just had to get that off my chest. Frank Wright, do the right thing. Don't get that quarterback hurt.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying all off season, Corey.
Okay,
I'm
right.
worried about it. So I'm going to go with a future bet as we approach the kickoff of the NFL season. And I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers money line against the Chicago Bears at plus 120 on DraftKings. So look, Aaron Rodgers owned the Bears, but I think it may just be the Packers who own the Bears. Chicago still has a ton of holes in their defense, and Green Bay's defense, their secondary in particular, is pretty good. I think this game is going to be tight, but Green Bay is going to come away with the win, and I will take plus odds on this all day.
For me today, we're going to go with a home run call on the MLB slate. We're going to go with Christian Walker to homer at plus 330, going up against a lefty in Rich Hill. Christian Walker is on fire right now. Over the last 3 games, he's got 4 home runs during that stretch. He's got 5 homers over the last 6 against left-handed pitching on the year. He's got 379 isolated power, and Rich Hill has allowed 17 homers to righties. So this right now guy is absolutely on fire. So why not keep the streak running at plus 330 odds for him to homer today?
Yeah,
I hope you're right, John, because I was embarrassed by the Angels and Reed Detmers shutting out the Rangers last night.
Yeah,
So, that was embarrassing.
I had some plays into that game as well.
Just don't mention that Christian Walker used to play for the Orioles, or you'll get suspended, right?
When's the last Orioles reference that we've had on the show? It's been a while. About time we bring it back.
I stopped doing it because I didn't want to get suspended. They said, you wear the wrong shirt, suspended. You bring up the fact that they lose to the Rays last year, suspended. You bring up old Orioles players that are doing good, suspended. It's too dangerous to bring them up.
Oh, man. And yeah, Sellers is right. They win every preseason game because Tucker doesn't sit out. They just throw him out there and kick those 60-yard field goals.
That is an interesting thought that they don't even try anybody else out there. And yeah, 60-yard bomb in the preseason. Hey, why not though? The question really is, it's not if they're going to win because they're going to. It's whether you want to bet them the money line at minus 140 or take them with 2.5 points. And I think I'm going to take the points. I think their backups are just better than the Commanders. I hope Isaiah Likely is out there playing today, man, because he's a lot of fun to watch.
Hey, you got a week one plus money line. The Pittsburgh Steelers at home versus San Francisco.
I don't know.
I just can't see it.
I don't know. That's a tough one. John, what do you think? Because you weren't on here. We've talked about this one before.
Yeah.
You weren't on here. Do you think that the Steelers can outright beat the 49ers? That's in Pittsburgh, right?
That game is in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, I don't know. The reports out of camp is like Brock Purdy's throwing interceptions like nobody out there. So, I mean,
nobody.
If that defense gets after them, I mean, they do have to travel West Coast, East Coast, open the season on the road. Pittsburgh's defense in the last couple of years has played really well at home. They get after the passer. And I still think Brock Purdy is kind of untested. I understand, what he did at the end of last year, but small sample size. I mean, we'll see what he can actually be as an NFL quarterback, or if he just kind of rode the momentum wave of, being protected in that Shanahan offense with that great offensive line. Give him a full season. He might end up being exposed as the last pick in the NFL draft for a reason. So
I'll tell you this: the sophomore slump is
It's
real
real. Yep.
for a reason, and the big reason is the tape, because these guys, their jobs are to scour all this tape and say, okay, when his left foot is here, that means it's a run play. These guys have tells and stuff. There was a tennis player once that I think it was against Andre Agassi. Andre Agassi beat this guy like 15 times in a row, and when they finally retired, Agassi at a bar went up to him, was like, by the way, you have your tongue on the side that you're going to serve on. This guy would be standing there going like this, and the guy was like devastated. He like left the bar, right? But like, I mean, those little things. You didn't have tape on Geno Smith last year, now you do. So kind of scary.
I will say I am fading Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk in week 1 in DFS formats, because if they move the ball at all, it's going to be George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey all day, because that Pittsburgh secondary has really bulked up, and they're kind of scary.
The only place I ever play Deebo is DFS, because I never know when he's going to get that end around for a touchdown or not. Right. But when he does get it, he blows up for like 30 points.
Don't forget that Jordan Love, Christian Watson week 1 stat. Just let you know if you want to win some money.
That's a smash.
Jordan Love is going to be. He's my new Bryce Young.
Oh man, Corey!
You already have.
I'm just playing. I'm still with Bryce Young. Young.
That's funny.
That was today's edition of A Bettor Morning. Thank you to Corey, Britt, Jon, and Coop. Make sure you check out Alarm Fantasy Football with Howard Bender, Andrew Cooper, and Britt Flynn at 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you missed any of our shows, you can find them all on our YouTube channel and at bettorsports.com. We wish everyone a better day.